Good afternoon, members of the MAG Management Committee. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you'd like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a request to speak card located on the information table in the hallway and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchase a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We'll now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members. MAG staff will do the roll call, both members participating in person and virtually.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go down the list of members alphabetically. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Patrick Banger.
Present.
Thank you. Jeffrey Barton. Jean Blackman. Chair Brady.
Here.
Thank you. Andrew Ching.
Here.
Thank you. Ron Corbin.
Here.
Thank you. Javier Sedovich as proxy for Dan Cotterman. Henry Darwin.
Here.
Thank you. Crystal Dykes.
Present.
Thank you. Carrie Dyrick. Stephen Erno.
Present.
Thank you. Jeff Graves as proxy for Lisa Garcia.
Here.
Thank you. Bruce Gardner.
Here.
Thank you. Rachel Goodwin. Ben Bitter as proxy for Rick Horst. Rosa Inchausti. Suzanne Jones. Jeff Kulaga. Leo Liu.
Here.
Thank you. Reyes Medrano. Jessica Mefford Miller.
Present.
Thank you. Jennifer Jack as proxy for Ryan Myers.
Present.
Thank you. Gary Neese. Kevin Phelps.
Here.
Thank you. Calvin Pilcher. Jen Pekorski.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Bryant Powell.
Here.
Thank you. Lynette Reed.
Present.
Thank you. Bill Murphy as proxy for Jim Thompson.
Here.
Thank you. Stacey Gillen as proxy for Director Toth.
Here.
Thank you. Kathy Valenzuela.
Here.
Thank you. Matthew Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Bob Wingenroth.
Here.
Thank you. Joshua Wright.
Here.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you. Our next item is call to the audience. I don't believe we received any cards. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So we've not received any requests to speak cards from the call to the audience. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. And staff, have we received online written comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received one written online comment for call to the audience on various subjects. They've been provided to the members in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. All right, we'll now proceed to item 4, informational items. Items 4A through 4C are for information only. Does any member of the committee have questions or request a presentation on any of these items? All right. If not, we'll next item is item 5, approval of the consent agenda. So items 5A through 5K are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the committee have questions or request a presentation on any of these items?
This is Jeff Graves in the town of Florence. Just had a question on 5E on the what's the process going forward? after the approval of the draft numbers.
We have a member of staff who can answer the question on 5E. Did you hear the question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you repeat the question? I think I did. I want to make sure I.
Yeah,
Yes.
Jeff, repeat the question, please, Jeff.
Absolutely. On 5E, just curious what the process is going forward after approval of these draft population figures. This is my first time seeing the group quarters numbers, and they're quite a bit lower than I had expected. And so given that the census has not approved their final recount or adjustment to those numbers, just curious what the process is going forward and what may be done if we don't get those numbers prior to the approval and submittal of these figures on December 15th.
Right, that's a great question. Something we've been working on for a couple months to figure out. The group quarters numbers based on the census and their reconfiguring from the group quarters challenge program. We've been working with the state demographer, and I believe we'll get the final control totals for the county from the state demographer by December 15th, as you said. And then we're most likely not going to have the final group quarters numbers from census until after that. So those numbers will be reflected in next year's estimates. And if needed, I think we can go back. We could revise these, but by then, I don't know how much of it will matter. But we will continue to monitor that. And we've been working with a solution with the state demographer, and this is the best thing that we've been able to do so far. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think so. I'll reach out to MAG directly on this and see kind of what we can do to engage and get these numbers right. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me or Anna Bob or both of us, and we can walk you through what we've been doing and what we will do moving forward. But like I said, we've been working on this for a while because we do know that this is an issue based on the Census Bureau's timing and or lack thereof.
Absolutely. Appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions from the members of the committee? Again, I don't believe we have any requests to speak cards from the public. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. All right, so I think we're ready for a motion to approve consent items 5A through 5K.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
if I might interrupt, we did receive.
Oh, do you
written
have online comments? Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, which all the members have received for consideration.
Thank you. So there is online for the consent.
The written comments, and all the members have that copy.
Okay, thank you. All right. Is there a motion to approve consent items 5A through 5K?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Was that you, Kevin? Okay, did you get the motion in a second? Lynette? For
Repeat the
motion?
names, please.
Did you? Oh, sorry. Lynette, those Lynette, right? Lynette for the motion to approve and Kevin Phelps for the second.
Thank you.
All right, so we have the motion and second. We'll take the vote. We will have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras, like many of you done that, unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces of everyone to participate. We're looking at you right now. And to participate in the voice vote. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their camera, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual participants who did not turn on their camera. So members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so we can staff can count the people's names, and your faces and names that are not on. Okay, so it looks like we got a good representation. All right. So can I have a voice vote for those in the room and those online? Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. All right, so leave your cameras on. This is the part is the magic. I don't know. Staff, are any those you need to call virtually or get everybody?
I will need to call a few members virtually.
Okay.
Carrie Dyrick, how do you vote?
I just joined, and so I did not hear the discussion, so a no vote.
Okay.
Thank you. Jennifer Jack, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Suzanne Jones, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we have the motion passes with 1 no.
Thank you. All right, we're now, hold on. Proceeding to item 6. Item 6 is an update on activities of the MAG 911 Study Committee. Item 6 is on the agenda for information discussion. This says I want to, but I really don't. Well, Ed will help me on the update. Do you want me to start it, or Nate?
Yeah.
You get it. You introduce it.
Mr. Chair, we'll have
Then
Nathan
we'll help you.
and
How's that?
Audrey
Oh, no, there's Audrey.
for both
Okay.
staffing and
The
stuff.
experts. Okay.
Nathan, and then open
So
to
this is
you.
just an
and others.
update on our discussions on 911 with ADO. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Management Committee. Study Committee continues to meet about a year into that effort now. A lot has gone on to an assessment of the state contract managed services. That work was done via federal engineering, a consultant that has been accepted, and we've reported out on their work to date. Conversations continue with Arizona Department of Administration, who has oversight on 911 activities within the state. Those conversations are ongoing, trying to get a better handle on aspects of the state contract services, including service level agreements, response times, data center backup potentially. So those are ongoing. Don't want to lose sight too, as study committee does their work on issues of governance will need to be examined. So there's a lot more to come, acknowledging that we do not have policy meetings scheduled in the month of December. So hopefully we'll look for more updates, potential actions in the month of January timeframe for this and potentially regional council, depending on how conversations with the ADOA go, and of course study committee activities around those other issues of governance and related. Audrey Skidmore is here as well. She can provide any additional more technical updates regarding state contract services, but acknowledging that the co-chairs I think wanted to provide an update as well on activities of study committee and conversations with ADOA.
Thank you. So just make it very clear and correct me, make sure I cover this. So we met with the state. We had a couple of different asks, but I'm going to try to summarize them and see if you can make sure I got them correctly. So one of the concerns we had, and Audrey, this is feedback from our consultants, federal engineering, areas where they felt like we could improve the level of service was being provided under the state contract. One was making sure or asking that all the data center backups would be located in the state of Arizona. That there wouldn't be data centers that would be backing up our system in Dallas or Los Angeles. That was one. The other was on policy routing to make sure we had the opportunity to establish those policies before calls would be rolling out of the original PSAP, that we would have the opportunity to sit down and discuss and establish what those policies would be. There's been some experiences where that hasn't happened on the onset, and it's created some stresses in the system. And then the last one was improving upon the current service level agreements that are in place today under the current contract, as far as the response for, give us some examples of what does that mean?
Yes, Chair. You actually have all of that correct. So the for the service level agreements were set to accommodate the entire state. That's particularly in a crisis situation, how quickly they have to respond and how quickly they have to have someone on site if it's appropriate. Our feeling and with our consultant is that in a major metro that the response times we would expect would be different than to get to a rural location. So we addressed those specifically.
Okay. So where we'll be hearing back with the state they're going to return back and share with us their response to those. At least they received them very well, and they were just going to have that conversation. The other things that we're going to have to talk about are really, and I think Ed expressed as well the other day, ADOA has been they've had the benefit, whether it's been easy or not, that MR 911 has established the priorities and the budgeting for this group, this region of 30 some communities. Now with MAG not being, MR 911 not being available, now they get to negotiate with 90 plus cities across the state about the budgeting and the allocation. And so we're interested to kind of see what those stated criteria and guidelines are, that more transparency in that process. So that's going to be an interesting conversation we're going to look for in the future. Okay. Anything else, Ed, do you think we should add? I think we've covered, we've kind of got it down. Kevin, anything? We got down to those issues, I think, right? Okay. Yes, Audrey, go ahead.
The only thing we didn't touch on was unfreezing the existing project that allows the
Mhm.
next gen services. And I think we've made significant progress.
Oh, we
on
have.
that.
Okay, that's good news. Okay. So while we're waiting for this conversion to make sure the current system continues to stay up to date, as well as maintaining the staffing and all the process. So they have to keep funding the system until the time that we switch over. Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? It's like Gilligan's Island. We thought this was a overnight trip and we're on month 9 or something like that. All right. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to item 7, update on the Interstate 10 Deck Park Tunnel to Interstate 10, Interstate 17 Split Freeway Corridor Planning Study. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is on for information. I think 2 things. Number one is it's an example of a part of freeway that probably everybody goes through at some point in their time here in a month. Most everybody goes through there, and Brad's numbers are going to show that. The second part is this is really showing a transition that was started with the Broadway curve, where MAG and the region is now having to invest money in going back to freeways that were maybe Prop 300 freeways. We now have to go back and invest money in rebuilding, rehabilitating, bringing up to speed those freeways as well, which is going to be more of our experience as we go forward with Prop 479. There will still be greenfield freeways, but we're also going to have to start doing these projects where we're going back and redoing some of the work we did 25, 30, 35 years ago. With that, I'll turn it over to the project manager, Brad Williams, who is our expert on this, and take it away.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for the opportunity to present this to you. The I-5 corridor.
Get into that microphone.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to hear me better now?
Yes.
Great. All right. The I-10 corridor study is, I'm bringing this to you just so that you know about the study and also to talk about the public engagement program that has just kicked off. The limits of this project begin at the Deck Park Tunnel, which you can see on the insert here with the purple box on the left-hand side. It goes over to the mini stack interchange with the 51 and the 202, then south to the stack interchange with I-17. This portion of the freeway system carries the most traffic in the region. As of spring of this year, our data people were able to tell us that at over 300,000 vehicles per day, this is the highest volume section of the freeway system. Our study has 3 basic elements: to identify the critical issues that need to be addressed, find some effective and implementable solutions for them, and then to establish a framework in the future so that these improvements can be funded through the Prop 400 extension program. We've had several different partners on this, certainly the city, but it also includes FHWA and the Federal Aviation Administration. We have several objectives for this. Safety and operations are the ones that I'm going to spend the most time on in this presentation, but there are other objectives as well. And I want to start with safety. This section of I-10 has a lot of crashes. If you look at the numbers here, the second number down on the left, 5.4 crashes every day. That's the average for the 6-year period between 2016 and 2021. What you're looking at on the right is a heat map that shows where the highest frequencies are of these crashes. There's also, if you look carefully, you can see some little black dots. Those little black dots represent crashes that occurred that caused death. And another number that I want to point out is 1.2 crashes causing severe injury or death occur every month in that same 6-year period. Let's move on to operations. And what I want to do here is to give you a couple of examples by taking a little ride together in a car on the freeway. And the one I'm going to start with is on the 10 as you're heading south out of the Mini Stack interchange, heading down towards Sky Harbor Boulevard. You've just gone through the Mini Stack, and suddenly you're finding that traffic is moving very well, averaging 59 miles per hour. But very quickly, as you move further south, you slam on the brakes harder and harder, and things get slower and slower until you're down to 8 miles an hour by the time you get to Sky Harbor Boulevard. Now, the problem didn't begin up near the Mini Stack. The problem began probably south of Sky Harbor Boulevard, but vehicles are queuing ever further upstream. So a lot of people experience the inconvenience of that. And that is indeed a safety issue as well. I want to move to another example. This is basically on the same trip, but now you're heading eastbound from 7th Street, and you're just getting to the 16th Street off-ramp. What you're looking at here is metadata. Each little dot that you see is a car, and they're color-coded by speed. So the yellow dots are moving quickly. The red dots are not moving quickly. And what you're seeing here is the right-hand 2 lanes are very, very slow. Those are the lanes that take you to the Mini Stack interchange, to the 51 and the 202. On the left-hand side, the lanes are moving very quickly. This creates a number of issues. You have weaving challenges. How do you get from the slow lane into the fast lane, or vice versa? Creates sudden stops and starts, incentives for queue jumping, where people will go as fast as they can on the left as far as possible before jumping over to the right at the last minute. And all of these things add to the potential for crashes. So the operations take us right back to safety. What you're looking at here is a diagram where the circles are the hot spots that we showed you for crashes in an earlier slide. The blue lines that you see along the freeway are the locations where you have high speed differential that experience one of those 2 examples that I just shared with you. So we think that if we can reduce those places where we have severe speed differential, we can also reduce the number of crashes. Moving on, we also are using this study to try to improve access in and out of downtown and Sky Harbor Airport, as well as protecting the communities around the freeway and enhancing travel for the entire region, because red lines here are showing slow traffic. They tend to show up closer to downtown, closer to this area. So we want to do what we can to improve that. What I'd like to do now is to address some of the types of solutions that we're looking at to try and fix this problem. And I'm going to begin with a couple of examples here and talk about the problem and how we can solve it. What you're looking at here is a section of freeway. Traffic is moving from your left to your right. And you can see there's an on-ramp on the left-hand side where cars get on and traffic volumes get higher. Then a little later, there's an exit ramp. Some of the cars get off and the traffic gets lower again. But in that center section, if there's too much traffic or if it's not long enough, you can have severe weaving problems. So one of the ways of solving that is to move these ramps, switch the positions, take the off-ramp and put it first, and put the on-ramp at the end on the right-hand side, and that will make the traffic in between actually lower. Now, in order to do that, these ramps might run into each other. So we end up having to elevate one of them so that we can get them both moving, and we call that braided ramps. So that's the first example. The second example is where you have cars weaving across many lanes. That is certainly an issue both with safety and operations. Another solution is to provide some sort of hard or soft barrier that doesn't allow cars to weave. and that can significantly improve safety and improve the operations at the same time. Now, the third example, both of these diagrams are identical. And in this case, the traffic is moving from the right to the left. So what you have is a 4-lane freeway. There's an exit ramp, but you can either exit or continue going, but then the lane disappears. So then you have to weave over into another lane to continue on the trip. Now, one solution to solve that is to fill in the gap and to continue that 4th lane all the way across to the next ramp. We call that an auxiliary lane. Another way of solving this problem is to basically go in the other direction, and that's not allow you to go through. When you get to the exit ramp, you can only exit. Both of these reduce weaving and improve operations in that center section. The last example I want to give you is finding ways to get vehicles on and off the freeway without using the interchanges. And I'm talking about the HOV lanes. We have a few of these already in the downtown area, but we're looking to find more so that vehicles can get on and off the HOV lanes without ever getting on the freeway main line. And that will reduce a lot of weaving. I'm going to skip that slide and now talk about our public engagement program. At the time I presented this to the regional council, it hadn't yet begun, but it now is active. We have a website, and if you're interested in seeing it, you can just go on the MAG website, go to Programs, Transportation, Freeways and Highways, and you'll find this study. I particularly want to point out the survey that is underway. This survey is open until the end of November, and it has 2 parts. There are a series of questions that we want responders to answer, but there also is a map, an interactive map, where you can actually drop a pin and make a comment about a specific location and talk about your experiences there. So we'd like you to encourage your jurisdictions to participate in this, to go to the website, to take the survey. We want to get as much response as we can. So the project schedule is we've developed a series of strategies that we're now testing. We have the public input, and the evaluation is currently underway. Early next year in the winter or spring, we will be developing draft recommendations. We will have a public meeting to discuss those, and then we will bring them through the MAG committee process for approval. And the recommendations from this study will be the basis for transportation improvements in this area funded through Prop 400. Mr. Chairman, that ends my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So Bradley, I think I've determined I need to stay off the freeways if I'm going to live. That's pretty scary. Those numbers I've never heard those numbers. That was pretty astounding. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, this is
These
all
conditions
due haste
exist.
on this one.
These conditions exist, specifically here, but they exist in all parts of our freeway system. So this sort of analysis and work is eventually going to get out the 202, the 101 as they age and we get around there. So in partnership with ADOT, we're really happy to do this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Oh yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
Thank you. To that point, as current projects are being planned and completed right now, are the things that we're seeing already in the planning for projects that are, like, I'm thinking of the Broadway Curve project, et cetera. We're already implementing some of the things that are not just long range thinking about it, but are some of the ideas and solutions you presented already in process?
It's a standard part of design to look at these kinds of opportunities throughout the project. So from the early planning all the way through to bidding the project for construction, these issues are asked, and decisions are made on cost effectiveness and other issues to come up with the best design possible.
I'd also add to that, when we talked to the TPC about this, they challenged us not to wait until the end to do things. So it was really, if there's low hanging fruit on safety, let's do it now. Let's not wait for 3 years to do it. And so Brad and John and the staff have been talking with ADOT already about where there are maybe non-capital ways to improve safety to start down that path, because as Chris said, these numbers are eye-opening when you think about the human toll of those numbers. So we are already starting with ADOT to try and do some things early.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I concur in not waiting on safety if it's feasible right away. Thank you.
Brad, does it make sense though that, I mean, you seem to be making the point that the speed differential, right, is a big deal as you're coming, and then it just comes down, it's just transitioning to a much slower speed because of congestion or whatever. I mean, I hate to say this, but by lowering the speed limit, does that, or is that just, people are still going to drive that fast regardless, or would that help at least in some of those sections so that differential isn't as great? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Addressing speeds is one of the strategies that we're testing.
Okay.
So we will be able to answer that question.
Okay.
We don't have the answer yet, but it's on our list of things that we're studying right now.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much for that presentation. Okay, we're going to proceed to item 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a statutorily required annual report on the implementation of Prop 400. We'll be very brief, but Steph Stearns, who's our project manager on this, will give the presentation. Steph?
Thank you, Ed, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair Brady and members of the committee. Like Ed said, this is just for information and discussion. So the 2023 annual report is a requirement in state statute. The report has been prepared this year. It covers the 3 modal lifecycle program and addresses project status, financing, and the outlook for implementation. Federal and half-cent sales tax funds are fund projections are done as part of the Prop 400 report. So we'll start with the half-cent sales tax funds. Over the lifetime of the program through 2026, there are forecasted $2 billion of half-cent sales tax funds in the region. You can see on the slide, these projections have increased slightly since the last year. So that is good news for us. Next slide. So federal fund projections are forecasted to total $687 million over the lifetime of the program. You'll notice that FTA funds, or Federal Transit Administration funds, make up a pretty significant portion of the pie chart here. This is because the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act provided historic increases to FTA funds nationwide. And then I'll touch briefly on each of the 3 modal lifecycle programs and the accomplishments in the past year. So with the Freeway Lifecycle Program, 3 projects were completed as shown on the screen, with 5 projects underway. The Arterial Lifecycle Program, many projects were completed, underway, or advertised for bid over the past year. A selection of them are shown on the screen. And then moving on to the Transit Lifecycle Program, which is split between bus and rail. On the bus side, we saw 2 route extensions and 124 vehicle purchases. These vehicles include both expansion and replacement vehicles for bus and paratransit fleets. And then on the rail side, we saw continued construction of 2 light rail extensions. And then next, I'd like to zoom out and just talk about accomplishments of Prop 400 since inception of the program. It's been 422 corridor miles of freeway highway projects, 252 corridor miles of arterial projects, and over 118 million bus transit revenue miles. Looking forward, MAG staff will continue to review the program cost estimates, make adjustments as needed, and we look forward to next November, where Prop 479, also known as the extension of Prop 400, will be on the ballot. Chair Brady, members of the committee, that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Steph, you're going to be fully responsible. Is this Prop 400 extension, or is it going to be now Prop 479? I just need to know right now, going forward, what are we going to call this?
Prop 479.
Okay, there you go. It's official. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Those were impressive numbers on what's been completed. Do we have the total dollar amount that supports that?
We can provide that to you.
It'd be interesting. I think that's a huge number too, right? And just what it takes to deliver on that. Those are great summaries, and I suspect they'll be used in support of Prop 479 too. So, all right, any questions? Very good. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. All right, we're proceeding to item 9. Update on ozone attainment area is on the agenda for. Ed, will you introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We wanted to come to you all as the management committee to take a little bit of time to dig into this. This presentation is largely the backbone of the presentation that Mayor Gallego and Supervisor or Chairman Hickman gave to the EPA Deputy Air Administrator back at the end of September. And it's trying to lay out the case for what is going on here with ozone, what our questions are that we can't answer, that we need EPA's help with. And it's really sets us up for a conversation about where we're headed with ozone non-attainment, which is frankly, we are headed to being downgraded from a moderate to a serious non-attainment area. Because as we explain it here, we cannot get to attainment under the existing models. And so we're gonna have to figure out some other ways to try to continue to improve our air quality, but also have EPA help us with some answers to some mysteries that Tim will tell you about. So Tim Franquist is our environmental manager. If he looks a little bit tired around the edges, it's because he has a brand new baby in his house. So we congratulate Tim and his wife on the healthy baby, Mateo. And Tim's back with us now after a little bit of leave for that. And he'll walk you through the presentation. We really want this to be an open dialogue where you have questions. As I talk to some of our managers, it's like, this is something that your economic development people need to understand, because this is going to become a subject of discussion with businesses that are wanting to expand or relocate to the Phoenix metro area, to the air quality area. They need to understand this. And they do. They're pretty sophisticated. In talking to Chris Camacho, this is one of the top questions that he has asked. He and his staff are asked: water, air, transportation, heat, power, land availability. They're all in there. So this is one of those key areas. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, Ed. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to give a ozone update today. We'll start with our main priorities, in compliance with the 2015 standard is of critical importance to public health, the economy, and economic development, as pointed out. Given the amount of precursors, so that's the VOCs and NOx we've been talking about that come from outside of our area, it does make it very challenging for us to attain the standard. Our region is a national center for microchip and EV manufacturers.
You guys need to invest in a longer mic.
Yes. I can squat.
There you go.
That's right. Thank you, Audra. Our region is a national center of microchip and EV production, including support industries. Ensuring those industries can thrive today and in the future is a national security and economic importance. Economic and transportation sanctions are counterproductive to reaching attainment. We'll explain that in detail. We need to work closely with the EPA staff to ensure our local controls are actually reducing ozone, not in a model, but at the monitor. So we're not back doing this in 3 to 5 years. So with that, we've pointed out before, but I think it's important to point out again that we have a very large planning area. So the area in blue here is the MAG planning area. The outline that we see there is the non-attainment area. And I think we pointed out before, this non-attainment area is almost the size of the state of Connecticut. Obviously, that puts us on scale of a state when we're talking about the scope and the number of sources and the complexity of the challenges that we deal with ozone. Love this graph, and we've seen this over the years. This is an updated version, but I think this really tells an important tale. And what we can see here is that Arizona obviously is growing quickly. Our region is growing quickly. Our vehicle miles traveled increases significantly, as does the population. Yet our emissions continue to actually decrease. And we'll talk a bit about the importance of that with ozone. And so, again, of critical importance to show our alignment with the EPA when we have this discussion. We need and want to be in compliance with the 2015 standard. That's the most ideal state. MAG has developed an electrical vehicle strategic plan to ensure our area is fully ready for EV deployment. We have a roadway and transit investments that include MAG long-range transportation plans, which are a critical component to our region's air quality. MAG has formed a regional work group to address climate change, resiliency, and extreme heat. We did that in fall of 2022. And MAG is the lead agency on the climate pollution reduction grant and the carbon reduction program, which we administer here at MAG. So really kind of getting to the crux of it. So I'll turn over to my script, which I think will be really important because you'll get to hear exactly what we presented to the EPA. So bear with me here. So admittedly, our region has been judicious about implementing a full suite of pollution controls since the new standard was implemented in 2015. Our judicious approach was based on the EPA modeling predictions that indicated our region would be complying with the 2015 standard with existing local controls and existing federal and later on federal controls. So essentially what we had in place. Complying with the ozone standard prior to 2025 is further supported by the EPA's Good Neighbor provision modeling, which just came out in spring of this year, which indicates that our worst performing monitor in the area would be at 70.5. And the reality is we're at 81 parts per billion. And so the key here is, why did we go full bore with a bunch of control measures? Well, everything from what EPA modeling said in 2015 is we would be in compliance by this point.
So let's stop at that slide for just a second. So go back if you would, Tyler. So what this was trying to demonstrate was EPA's own predictions when they changed the standard. Their own predictions and their own modelers said everyone except the orange, a little bit of orange in there, should meet the 70 parts per billion. Based on their science, their projections, we're lowering the standard to 70, and we think, given everything going on, almost everyone should make that based on what we know. And what Tim pointed out was, you said that you thought we would be at 70. We're actually at 81. So something in your own projections did not pan out the way you expected it to. We're not, we're not saying they did something wrong. It's just, we wanted to establish their own data said something would happen that has not happened. Therefore, we need to have a conversation about that. So that's what this is trying to demonstrate.
Okay, I think this slide here, we've mentioned this one. This is a key slide, I think, that really sums up our issue in whole. So our region has a proven record of complying with the NAAQS, including achieving compliance with the 1997 and 2008 ozone standard. Our region did that by implementing over 90 different ozone control measures. However, with even the 90 control measures in place and working, we are still struggling to comply with the 2015 standard. That is, the ozone concentrations were declining as predicted. However, in 2018, we actually saw increases in concentrations. Due to the significant decrease in ozone concentrations between 2016 and 2000, our region, in fact, met the 2008 standard of 75 parts per billion. However, in a few short years, we're right back to a situation where we're seeing decreasing emissions, but increasing concentrations.
So stop there again too. So again, there's a lot going on in this slide, but it's really, we felt the most impactful one, which is the bars, the gray and the black bars. That's the stuff that makes ozone. Stuff coming out of the tailpipes, stuff coming off wildfires, natural sources. As you see, it is going down steadily. We are decreasing the stuff that goes into the air. It's going down. And ozone, which is that blue line, kind of all over the place, but generally headed down, was tracking with that until, as Tim points out, that split there in 2018, ozone started going back up, but the stuff was still going down. The green is when you normalize for taking out wildfires. So that diversion, so EPA said, you should be fine. And our own experience has been, we're doing stuff to cut emissions, 90 measures, as Tim said, to cut emissions. But the ozone and the stuff in the air that causes it split in 2018, and we don't know why. And that's our dilemma as we try to figure out, well, so if we keep reducing the stuff in the air, which we should, is that necessarily going to mean that ozone goes down? That's not been our experience. That's where we need help.
Exactly. Yep. And to that end, we are working with Arizona State University to try to understand what that trend is. So again, we're not sitting around doing nothing, but it's a complicating issue. This trend is also complicating in the selection of control measures. As Ed was pointing out, since local emissions really aren't driving the issue, by putting additional control measures in, it complicates the effectiveness. Those measures would either be nullified or simply not work. Again, another really important slide here. We believe that transported emissions play a significant role in our regional increasing ozone levels. When comparing the EPA's most recent Good Neighbor provision modeling, which again came out in June of 2023, it shows essentially what we're modeling here in that what we call uncontrollable, and that's the international interstate, so that'd be from California, other states, or natural, the things that we can't control. We can see that about 74% of that from our own modeling shows it's really what we call uncontrollable. From the EPA Good Neighbor Provision modeling, again, it's very recent, also says that the same ratios are there. Again, the lack of regionally emission complicates the selection of ozone control measures, since it appears that local emissions don't drive the ozone concentration levels. As such, local controls would have limited to neutral effects on ozone concentrations. And just in terms of wildfire, again, we know we're impacted pretty significantly here in Arizona with wildfires, ones that are in-state and from California. Again, what this graph shows, again, we've had a large increase in wildfire emissions. Again, we're investigating what that is, but that's a contributor of VOCs to the ozone concentrations. Since 2017, we've actually had 95 exceedances related to wildfires. And just to give this slide some context, so when we drafted a letter to the EPA, we did, of course, get a response letter back. They offered up some tools, some options that we could consider. We were appreciative of that, but we kind of wanted to go through the list with the EPA to explain why those are actually challenging. The first on there is the EPA's mobile source rules for light and heavy duty vehicles. Again, we're happy that will be a big help. As we pointed out many times before, our largest local source of ozone emissions is on road vehicles. The issue here is that we will not see these impacts until at least 2027, and obviously we'll be in serious non-attainment by that point. The interstate California rule, so that's the Good Neighbor provision. Again, with this, we're not even really sure what's going to come out of that. What are the emission reductions and when that happens? So again, we should experience something at some point, but not fast enough and at such amounts that we'd expect it to be helpful in today. The Arizona opt-in to the California it would be the vehicle emission regulations. Again, we just don't see a significant benefit here. Right now, people subject to the vehicle emission testing program at about a 95% success rate. This would only slightly change that ratio. And again, we couldn't even implement that until 2027. So again, too little, too late. The DERA program, so that's the diesel emissions retrofit program run by the county. Again, very appreciative of that program, very excited about that program. It's resulted in about 121 vehicles being changed out. Again, we would need significantly more vehicles to actually move the needle in that regard. And then the IRA, the Infrastructure Reduction Act, Inflation Reduction Act. This is the CPRG that we've been talking about. Again, it's very unclear what will be awarded to this area. We recently found out that the EPA will be awarding 30 to 100 different projects. So we may see just a handful, if any, projects here. So again, it's unknown what we would actually get in emission results from that and when that would happen. Again, the tools are there. They will help us at some point, but again, we need assistance today. So in terms of timeline, again, this is actually an updated one because we did get the failure finding to submit the ozone plan in October of 23. So these are now much more date certain. So we can see it's a very accelerated time frame now that we're on the sanctions clock. And what that means is that in 18 months, we will have be subject to 2-to-1 offsets. So all the emission offset permitting discussions we've been having, that jumps to 2-to-1. 6 months after that, if we don't have a plan in, that's when our highway monies could be taken away. So that would be in the non-attainment area. So obviously there would be a huge impact. And then at that point, the federal government is required by law to develop a federal implementation plan. And what that means is all the work that we do here, all the local planning gets shifted to the EPA. They will decide for us what measures those are, and they will become federally enforceable at that point. And so sanctioning the solution, I think this is another really good slide and really talks to a lot of the great economic development we've seen here. Arizona, and in particularly our valley here, has become an epicenter for electric car manufacturing, battery manufacturing, all these support facilities. It's also obviously become a big area for microchip manufacturing. So what we're trying to show here is that these sanctions, these 2-to-1 offsets, actually harm the permitting of these types of facilities. So if they want to expand, unfortunately, if we go to serious non-attainment, that threshold, as we talked about before, from 100 tons per year goes to 50. We have no emission offsets in the bank, and it makes it nearly impossible for these facilities to expand. Obviously, it has impact on national security for TSMC and Intel. Then obviously, these are the solutions to a lot of our urban ozone problems are right here in the area. And unfortunately, if they do want to expand, it's going to be a huge challenge going forward. So the saying here is we just don't want to sanction the solution. So kind of round it out here. So kind of in a summary, again, we want to be in full compliance with the 2015 standard that's best for public health, the environment, and the economic development. Given the amount of precursors outside of the local area, as well as our climate and geography, which is true of the Intermountain West, we face a difficult path to air quality attainment. Our region is a national center of microchip and EV production and support facilities. Ensuring those facilities can thrive today and in the future is of both national security and economic importance. Economic and transportation sanctions are counterproductive to region attainment. I think that's important. I think we can unpack that a little bit now. And what we mean by that is that we get our highway monies pulled. A lot of our monies, as we saw earlier, go to congestion and mitigation for air quality purposes. We would lose that opportunity to fix our air quality based on that kind of sanction. Same with the EV production. Obviously, those EVs do help with air quality locally. If we can't build those vehicles, that harms our solution as well. And then lastly, we need to work closely with EPA's technical staff to identify effective local controls that result in reductions at the monitor and not just in a model. And again, just to bring it full home, again, I think this slide really says a lot. One, that we have been doing a lot in the region, reducing emissions as mandated. However, we see those concentrations going up. So that is really the crux of our problem here in the region. So to that end, we want to review and identify real effective ozone reduction strategies in partnership with the EPA. We want flexibility on guidance and rules. There's plenty there. You can see the list. International transport's a guidance document we could use help on, interstate transport, exceptional events, and the list goes on. And again, really don't sanction the solution. These sanctions are counterproductive to air quality. The programs that they end up affecting are the programs that actually reduce precursors of ozone. And so again, we just don't want to have those sanctions on us for multiple different reasons, but mainly because it actually is counterproductive to achieving compliance. And with that, Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. So, what's the timing of the further going from moderate to serious? When does that happen?
So the deadline to comply with the current standard is August of 2024. The challenge with that is because it's rear view looking, the data set that they're going to use is 21 to 23. So we've kind of already lost our opportunity there. Yeah.
Again, it's those Californians, man. We keep breathing. Now they're sending their air this way for us to breathe. The one slide, and Ed, you try to explain this, but I worry that the more we keep showing this, we're going to get caught in this trying to explain the failure to submit idea. That's not, I mean, explain that again, because it's not that we were negligent in missing a deadline. Let's talk about that again. And because I think we're going to have to keep explaining this to people over and over. So let's go through that one more time.
Henry may actually be able to help us with this too, but you have to submit a plan to be in compliance. And given the data that we showed, that Tim showed, we couldn't figure out a way to submit something that showed compliance that wasn't, that was real. So we chose not to do that, knowing that we were going to start a clock of about 18 months that would maybe focus people's attention in Washington at DEQ and us, focus our attention mutually on coming up with solutions that work. But yeah, it feels weird to have not met a deadline, but we really didn't have very good options to that, given that you have to demonstrate.
Wasn't a demo, yeah. There wasn't something to submit that showed you were compliant.
It's not like your homework where, like, if you just hand something in, you'll get 10
Partial
points
credit?
for partial credit. You got to hand something in that works. Maybe Henry, I don't know, you experienced that too.
No, I mean, that's certainly the case. And this is not an unheard of scenario. And a lot of states are in the same position that we're in. And on various different pollutants, this finding of failure to submit is a pretty common occurrence because of the challenges that a lot of states and regional planning areas have with demonstrating that they're meeting the standards. When EPA says, we're not going to approve it, there's really no point in spending all the time and effort to try to put together a plan that they won't approve.
Okay. I just think we need to be, because on its surface, somebody casually reading this is going to.
The other thing I would say about it is we were joined in this illustrious company by cities like Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Chicago, the greater Connecticut part of the New York metropolitan region, Philadelphia. So to Henry's point, we're in company with 11 other major metro areas that are experiencing the very same difficulty. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might
Yes,
just
please.
ask one question, that's sorry about this, Tim. I think the question I'm going to ask, but I noticed on your slide that on the sanctions, the slide says per EPA on both the sanctions. No, that slide there, the slide that we were just that slide there. Is that because we disagree with whether or not this is discretionary or not, or we had a conversation with EPA about whether these sanctions are discretionary or mandatory? Are you having those conversations with EPA?
Chairman, members of the committee, we have, and I think that was one of the things we brought up in that flexibility issue. So in terms of the sanctions, the Clean Air Act says it is discretionary. So what the Clean Air Act says, in 24 months, you have to pick one. So at 18 months, there's discretion of the administrator to pick both, or at 24 months, they have to pick one. So it doesn't have to be 2-to-1 offsets and then the highway sanctions. The EPA has a rule that they wrote that says that they shall do the 2-to-1 offsets at 18 months, and at 24 months, they would do the highway sanctions. So there's an opportunity for them to administratively change that rule, go back to the Clean Air Act language, and that would be discretionary for the administrator at that point to pick a sanction. They do have to pick one by the 24-month mark. Would that be a discussion of which one to pick? But that was one of the things that we did bring up, is there is, quote, flexibility. I know it's not super easy for them to do a rule change, but that is a rule change to pull that directive rule out and then go back to the Clean Air Act language, which would give them some discretion.
Yes, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Franquist. Great presentation about a very complicated topic, and it definitely was very educational for me. You hit on something just briefly I'm hoping you can expand on. You said there's a study going on with ASU about perhaps what the causes of that split in 2018 that Mr. Zuercher described are. I'm just curious a little bit more about maybe what is the range of hypotheses that you're studying, because it seems like that's the big missing piece of information that we have, is what happened that caused that trend to change. That would also, I would think, would help drive our solutions that perhaps we work on with the EPA and other partners.
Chairman, members of the committee, I think that's the crux of the issue is what is driving that. If it's local, we have potential controls. Right now, unfortunately, we don't have answers from ASU, and mainly because we're working off the same data sets, the same models. So it's really just kind of a thought process. Are they thinking something different than we're not? We are working with them. So again, our modelers are involved in that, but I think that's the complexity, is we're kind of hoping to find that needle in a haystack. But I think the real reality is international transport is driving a lot of this. Interstate transport is driving a lot of this. So I think we kind of do know in a lot of ways where it's coming, but we just want to make sure we check all the boxes. If there are things locally we can do, again, that's what that discussion on control measures, but that's the challenge right now, is we have a good sense of where it's coming from. Doesn't look like it's local. The stuff that's local is on-road vehicles. Only the EPA in California can set tailpipe standards. So again, it's just another level of challenges.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So thank you for the presentation. Great information, and a little bit on the coattails of Mr. Wright. So what is the EPA's response to that split? Don't they find that interesting, or do they just say, well, that's just okay, but too bad?
Chairman, members of the committee, I think we really actually have their ear on this one. There was a really good meeting that one of our staff members attended. The EPA is looking at the same thing. They do admit that the emissions are going down. They have some kind of loose theories, but I do think they're now scratching their heads as well, especially when the models are matching up, at least from a ratio standpoint. It's hard to kind of turn away from that. They don't have any answers in the today yet, but I think for the first time, we really do have them digging in technically and seeing a lot of the same things that we're seeing.
Because that slide is very telling. It's not just a little bit. It's very a distinct split there, and that should get the eyebrows of everybody's up a little bit at least, and questioning what's going on with that. I would think even in Washington.
So one of the outcomes of probably the best outcome of the meeting that the mayor and Chairman Hickman had was that this elevated to the national folks, not only our region, but now the national modelers and scientists are digging into there. And as Tim said, and Matt has been on calls with them too, they've come up with some loose theories, but they're trying to do some more research on that as well. So that was one good outcome. And I would just say we're continuing to work hard. Tim, his staff, Matt, in continuing to stay in lockstep with Maricopa County Air Quality and ADEQ with what our next steps are, because this is federal law. So we don't have the option of just saying, it's too hard, we're not going to do it, because federal law is very prescriptive about that. And so we're continuing to work with the county and the state on what can we do so that in 18 months, we're in a place where we are not getting sanctioned with our federal highway funds, or industry is getting a 2-to-1 offset instead of a 1.2-to-1. So we'll continue to do that and continue to keep everyone updated.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you. Thank you very much. All right, we'll proceed to the executive director's report. Ed?
Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, I will just say one thing, and this is our last meeting of the year. So wish everyone to have good holidays. And in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I want to just take a second and recognize some of the staff at MAG who make these meetings go, and you probably never know their names. Tyler runs the controls back there. Thank you, Tyler. Andrea, Destiny, Chantel, Juan, and they're aided by Kelly, Amy, Sepna. So these folks make these meetings work. Our team of Angie and Constance and the crew, they make sure that you have a good lunch. So just thank you to all of them, and thank you to all for a great year. And on behalf of MAG staff, have a safe and happy holidays. Maybe it means driving less on the I-10. I don't know. But
Do you want to live?
thanks for being here today.
Yeah, no, thank you. Anything from the legislative update? Okay, no future request for future agenda items. All right, no comments from the committee. All right, we'll stand adjourned until, wow.
Vision Centers of America.